There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with Friday Reads, first time in a while. Things are chaotic in my life, and all I will say is the one thing that's been resolved. Kenji and I both had a COVID scare last week, the week before. It lasted about 10 days or whatever, and we're both tested negative. So I guess we just had a little bit of the flu. So that's in large part why my appearances on my channel have been a little bit irregular of late, but I have 98% recovered from that, and Kenji's completely recovered. But yeah, we both had PCR tests and we didn't have COVID, so whatever we had was not all that trendy, but the COVID cases in Tokyo are just off the charts. Over 20,000 a day. So yeah, crazy. Other stuff going on I'm not going to talk about right now, but my appearances on my own channel might continue to be a little spotty for a while, and I'll be ready to talk about it at some point. But for now, I just was really in the mood this Friday to, even though I haven't finished a lot, because all the stuff that's been going on has definitely had an impact on how much I've read, I still am loving reading and loving making videos, so here I am. One more comment about that. For a while, you might mostly be seeing videos that I have recorded in the past that are in my backlog, including bite-sized book chats and basically book hauls, because I've got 6 months of those to get out. So anyway, I will do Friday Reads when I can, and I'm quite delighted to be doing it today. And I have decided to suspend the weekly highlights portion of my Friday Reads because, just because, maybe when things calm down a bit, I will resuscitate it. For now, you're just going to have to watch my channel list of new videos to see what you might have missed. I have finished 2 books. One was the audiobook of My Policeman by Bethan Roberts. And I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It's fairly recently published, I don't know when, 2 years ago or 5 years ago or something, set in Brighton. And it's about a closeted gay man, his wife, and his lover. I thought that it showed the dilemma of coming out quite poignantly and with a lot of psychological acuity. The audio narration was good, and I ended up feeling that it's written by a straight woman. As far as I know, Bethan Roberts is a straight woman, but I don't know that for sure. But it's written by a woman, and I had this sense, and I've talked about this with Roz, so if I'm inadvertently plagiarizing something Roz said, I agreed with her that there was this sense that the straight female writer was trying too hard to accurately portray and support the gay men in her novel, and so that the wife, the straight female, she kind of got short shrift. No, short shrift is not correct. I don't think she was being completely fair to. In the wife, the author created a character that I don't think needed to be so unsympathetic. She was a schemer, and I felt that was a little bit over the top because it felt like the author was encouraging us not to sympathize with her, and that didn't quite ring true. I certainly did have a lot of empathy for the 2 gay men in the story, but I felt a little bit manipulated into having less sympathy for the wife. So that I thought was a bit of a flaw. Other readers might not have the same feeling. Apparently it's being or has recently been or will be soon made into a movie with some famous stylish musician. Is it Rod Stewart or something? I don't know. But anyway, I'm glad I read it. I pretty much listened to it on audio exclusively without the benefit of the ebook, which I had, but I was mostly listening to it, on the train or whatever. So that was 4 stars. I also finished The Paper Door and Other Stories by Naoya Shiga, translated from the Japanese by Dunlop. And this was a wonderful little find. I love it when I buy a book, it sits on my shelf for years, and then I finally pick it up and end up loving it. It just makes me so excited about what's the next book I'm gonna finally pick up and love after staring at it for years, not knowing anything about it. Naoya Shiga wrote in most of his stuff in the first half of the 20th century. These stories in the table of contents are dated from 1904 to 1945. I believe he died in about 71 or something. And I haven't read, as usual, I haven't read the translator's preface because I just typically don't read that kind of stuff. If I was going to do a full review, which I wish I did, but I'm not really going to be doing very many full reviews for a while, I would read it. But these stories really hit me in my sweet spot for what I love about short fiction. There was a enigmatic quality to almost all of them, where the details that were included, they were so inscrutable, like I couldn't make any logical meaning, but like when a poem apparently works, I don't know what I'm talking about if I'm going to use an analogy to poetry, but it needed to be there and it was perfect, and there are no words, or I don't have any words to explain why it was perfect, but so many of these had that enigmatic, polished character that is the kind of short stories that I just love. So I don't know what else he's written that's in English. I will look into that. A lot of them had embedded narratives of the protagonist, who was different in most of the stories, I think all of the stories, but typically a Japanese man of the period, observing insects or birds or animals in nature or on the window in the train. And those potted narratives were, so if you like nature writing, or like, there was something about that really worked for me. There was a couple of them where I thought, oh God, Japanese men certainly haven't changed. And I'm not talking about my husband, but every other Japanese man I've ever met. Just really, I was going to say scabe, but you don't know what that means probably. Scabe just means kind of a perverted, horny. So a couple of them were like a lot of male Japanese fiction, very much preoccupied with mistresses and stuff. And when it was, a couple of them were just dialogue between the wounded wife and the husband came off to Shiga's credit like an asshole, so he was being honest. But where it was just dialogue back and forth, I didn't like those. I didn't care for them. But even some of those, there was just a lot of that enigmatic attention to really weird detail that added dimensions that I will be thinking about for a long time. So I really recommend The Paper Door. I don't know, one of my subscribers, I forget who you are, said that she got it on ebook as soon as she saw that I was reading it, so I haven't looked into it, but I picked up this secondhand here in Tokyo and really loved it. So that was a great way to finish off Japan in January. January in Japan, I think. I keep getting confused about that, and I'll never get it sorted out. So let's just keep going, shall we? So that's all I finished, because things have been crazy. I have started a bunch. No bails. I've started 5. So of the ones that I mentioned last time, 2 weeks ago, about that I was going to be starting, I've started The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore, and I don't know how I feel about it. 45 pages in, 5 chapters in. The writing is really interesting. I'm finding every so often a little bit overwritten, but otherwise really quite fascinating prose, quite impressive prose, but maybe a little bit too. Occasionally, I find that she has employed the most obscure, maybe period of the period adjective or adverb, where none such word was necessary, but for the most part, an invitingly weird prose style. It's set in this mid-17th century village or town during the Civil War. There's a mother and daughter that are both quite odd, but especially the mother, who is called the Bedlam West. That's her name, that's how she's known in the community. Her daughter, Rebecca, is the narrator. And just from looking at the synopsis, to the degree that I have, they get accused of witchcraft eventually, but that hasn't happened yet. So it's just kind of setting the scene in a way that's, so far, 45 pages in, has kept me kind of distant from the characters. So I'm just not quite sure about it, but intrigued, and if it's going to be a bail, it's not going to be a bail immediately. That's as optimistic as I can be. There's something that's not quite connecting for me. We will keep going with this. Much more exuberantly, let me tell you about Butter, Honey, Pig Bread. Butter, Honey, Pig Bread, the grocery store novel from Nigeria through by way of Canada by Francesca Ekwuyasi. And most people love this, and I am loving it too. I'm about the same number of pages in, so like I say, I've just been dipping into stuff. I haven't made very much reading progress, but this one has really grabbed me. I really like the characters. It so far is set in Nigeria, but there's a mother and 2 adult daughters, and one of the daughters lives in Canada and is back home for a visit with her new Arab-Canadian boyfriend. There's been some kind of a enmity or bad blood between the 2 sisters, so it's kind of a reunion after a long absence. And then the mother, Kambiri Nachi, as a child, she believed that she was Obanji, which is that same spirituality that Ekwuyasi explored in their Freshwater, which was a magical book in a way that worked for me. And so there's some of that in the childhood sections about the mother. And I don't know where it's going, but every time I read it, it makes me hungry. I wish I could get all the ingredients for all the various Nigerian dishes that she's making, but it's described in vivid detail. And I remember when Bill came on Bite Size Book Chat, he talked so much about the cooking. And it's not written as recipes, but there's enough detail about the cooking that you could actually make the dish. And I don't remember ever reading a work of literary fiction where that level of detail was in it, and I'm loving that, but it makes me hungry. Yeah, this so far is an unqualified success, and it's early days, read about 42 pages. And on ebook, I am reading the Indigenous novel set in what is now Canada, All the Quiet Places by Brian Thomas Isaac, and I love it too. It's one of the ones that I read to Lindy, and when I bailed on the other one, I replaced it with this one, and yeah, I really struggle with childhood-centered narratives, and this one is really working for me. I can't remember the last time I read a fictional narrative that created such a believable 6-dimension kid. He's a boy, and he's such a mischievous little boy with a single mom parent, and she is Indigenous. Seeing the world through his eyes is an utter joy so far. And I don't know where the story's going, but they have kind of a hard life, fairly poverty-stricken, but loving family, and the kids keep getting into all kinds of mischief because they, like we did when we were that age, they overhear things or they misinterpret things and then go and get themselves into trouble based on being kids trying to interpret an adult world or an adult anecdote. It's not just the misadventures of kids story, because that wouldn't hold my interest for very long. It's also, what's going on with the adults, and I'm not describing it very well, but I am engrossed in it. It makes me smile. Can you see me smiling? And a few days before February 1st rolled around, but as kind of the centerpiece of my Black History Month reading, I am doing as an audio text combo. I have not listened to the audio at all without having the ebook also open in front of me, which, as I say often on this channel, is for me the deepest, most satisfying way to read a book. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honorée Fanonne Jeffers. And it is, I don't know how far Greg's into it, but he's doing it on audio, and I am really loving it too. How many times, let's play a drinking game. How many times I say I'm really loving it. I have to have a sip of whiskey or something, but this one, oh my God, the audiobook's wonderful, and the story is, apparently, if the people that don't give it an unqualified 5-star review say, oh, it's a bit too long, there's too much narrative. And boy, that sometimes is a critique for me. That was my major criticism, which made me end up almost hating the airplane book from the Booker list, Great Circle or Big Circle or whatever that was. I'll put the GIF up here. But I mean, it's early days, but no, so far, this is not like that for me. I know that it's about 1,000 pages long. How many pages is the 800 pages in hardcover? So yeah, I've read maybe 50 pages or 40 pages, so I may share that critique by the end, but right now, I just think it's perfect. It has a feeling of maybe it's going to be kind of like Yagasi's Homegoing. Is that what it was called? Homegoing? Which I loved. But this is fantastic. I'm loving it. There, you have to have another sip of whiskey. And finally, I'm trying to always have one just because book on the go that isn't tied to a readathon, and I'm not doing buddy reads anymore, but in an attempt to always make room in my reading life in 2022 for spontaneous reading, I have picked up a book that I just heard a podcast about, and that is the famous podcast from Los Angeles, Bookworm, with Michael Silverblatt. Have I got that right? Yes, Michael Silverblatt. I've been listening to him for years. I don't listen to that podcast regularly. His literary taste goes so far into experimental literary fiction that he often loses me. But this one is not like that. This is called Mouth to Mouth by Antoine Wilson. If his latest podcast episode is about it, it must be a new release. Yes, it was published on January 11th. And that interview fascinated me, and I got the ebook and am 10% of the way into it. It is a story within a story, or it's one of those stories, it's like that old, to me feels like kind of a 19th century typical structure for a novel. Our protagonist is in the airport, and he sees a man who he is pretty sure is an acquaintance from his university days 10, 15 years before. But he's not sure because, looks different. And we get a lot about why our protagonist, I don't know if the protagonist is named, but the other guy is Jeff. The protagonist had been kind of obsessed in a way that almost felt sexual, but so far hasn't delved into that, with this guy who just tangentially was always there, but they never really made a friendship. But they took a class together, and he would just kind of show up at the oddest, significant times, just by chance, back in the day. And so he sees this guy, and the guy recognizes him, and then they go into the lounge, and Jeff tells them a story. And that's the whole novel, is whatever this story is that Jeff's telling our narrator, that starts back in his university days, and I don't know where it's going, but it's really compelling and really easy to just sink into. I like the writing very much. Antoine Wilson is a white American writer based in LA, I think. Yep. He's had quite a few other novels come out, but there's quite a lot of space in between them. I don't know how old he is. He doesn't look very old. 45 or something. But, it's really... like I say, it's easy to just, you get hooked in the first paragraph. So that's what I've started. I had hoped to finish a whole bunch of stuff, but life happened. Oh, just while I'm thinking about it, I'm still really enjoying the South African novel, The Wanderers by Mphuthumi and Ntabeni, which Bob the Booker and I will be doing a Zoom chat with the author, Mphuthumi, but that Zoom chat we have now scheduled for late February. So I know of one person who is reading it, so just to let you know, it's happening, but the chat won't be until, and probably won't get posted on our channels until the end of February or thereabouts, okay? But that is one that I'm really loving. And I'm now at, I think 15 books is a good number, so I'm not going to start any new books until I finish some, but I'm very close to finishing a couple others. So I will very briefly tell you about books that I would like to start, quite possibly before you see me next, especially since it might, I may not be doing Friday reads every week for a while. Black History Month is upon us. I have a TBR video, which I'll link. The first one I'm going to start from that is the biography of Fannie Lou Hamer. And I don't remember the details of what I read about her in the biography of John Lewis that Britta and I buddy read last year, but I believe she was a civil rights activist, an African-American woman in the 60s, and she was pivotal in the voter registration part of the civil rights movement. I believe I'm remembering that correctly. And there was some harrowing experiences that she endured. I think something like assassination attempt or whatever. I can't remember the details, but she just fascinated me from what I read. and this new biography has just come out. Until I Am Free. Fannie Lou Hamer's Enduring Message to America by Keisha and Blain. So I'm going to start that when I have room on my plate for it. The next other book I start, it will be for Invisible Cities. In February, it's Guyana and Uganda. So the book that I didn't, even though I have the physical book, I'm not going to go into the other room to pull it. I'll just put the cover image up here. Kololo Hill by Neema Shah, and she was born and raised in London of Ugandan heritage. I'm not sure if the story of Kololo Hill goes to the UK, but it certainly opens in Uganda, and I have chosen that. I read the first chapter of that to Lindy during our reading project, and given the kind of upset in my life at present, I'm not sure if that video Zoom chat with Lindy will happen, but maybe it will someday, maybe not. But Kololo Hill sounded great, so I'm eager to continue. Those two will be the next two I start, and I reserve the right to change my mind. This has been a lovely stress release for me. Oh, and by the way, I'm filming it using the back camera on my new iPad. I used it also for the Black History Month TBR, and it's the more powerful camera, so I think the video quality should be even better, but because it's back facing, I can't see myself on screen. So for example, when I'm holding the books up, I have no idea whether the books are in the frame or not. So if they weren't, that's why. I'll get it all sorted out eventually. In the meantime, happy reading and thanks for watching.